All right. Hello and welcome back. For the next company webcast, we welcome Botanix Pharmaceuticals, who trades under the ticker BOT on the ASX. And joining us from the company is Matt Callahan, the company's founder and executive director. Matt will be taking us through the company's slide presentation, and if time permits, we'll have a brief Q&A session. With that, Matt, let me go ahead and turn the floor over to you to begin.
Thanks, Robert. And thank you also to Lytham Partners for the opportunity to present today. I'll be talking about Botanix Pharmaceuticals. We trade on the Australian Stock Exchange and our ticker is BOT. So Botanix is focused in dermatology, particularly in areas where there are underserved patient populations for common skin diseases that most people would recognise. Other than my Australian accent, everyone is based in the US, in the Philadelphia area, or in Phoenix, Arizona. And between us, the broader team has been responsible for more than 30 different product launches. What we'll be talking about today is a new product, which is called Sofdra. It was recently approved by the FDA for the treatment of primary axillary hyperhidrosis or excessive sweating under the arms. And the company itself is well capitalized with about $67 million Australian at the end of the last quarter, which is going to fund our commercial launch, which has already got underway with a patient experience program in the last couple of months and will go into full commercial launch this quarter. So let's talk a little bit about hyperhidrosis and kind of what it is and its impact on this patient population. So as I mentioned, this is excessive sweating under the arms, which happens when you're not hot. So this is an overstimulation of the nervous system. So it's a physiological condition. Unfortunately, many of these patients who have hyperhidrosis under their arms also have it in their hands or their feet or some other region around their body. It starts during as they progress into puberty, and most of these patients cope as opposed to are treated. So they cope by frequently changing their clothes, by carrying an extra set of clothes. If they have to go out somewhere, you can buy specific hyperhidrosis t-shirts, or they only wear certain colors. So unfortunately, there's not been a lot of options for this patient population. And so Sofdra is the first and only new chemical entity ever developed for and approved for primary axillary hyperhidrosis. So this is how the drug works. So this is a topical drug. So it's a gel. It's applied to the surface of the skin under the arms using an applicator so that the patient does not have to actually touch the drug. The drug will penetrate through the skin and occupy the muscarinic acetylcholine receptors, or the M3AC receptors, as shown here on the diagram, for a period of time to prevent those sweat signals being sent out. Once that is done, the drug will actually go through the rest of the skin, end up in the bloodstream, where it is actually hydrolyzed into a much less active version of itself, so that it doesn't go around the body, turning off other cholinergic effects like tears or saliva in the same fashion as a general anticholinergic drug would do. So its side effect profile is much more appropriate and cleaner than the anticholinergics, but it works very effectively once applied at night for the following day's activities. So as long as you keep taking the drug, it works. And it also has the same efficacy, or has very similar efficacy over an extended period of time. There's no adaptation that we've seen of this particular biological function. So it provides a very good alternative to some of the other things that have been used for this patient population, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So this is both a representation of the kind of the competitive landscape, as well as an idea of the patient journey that patients with primary axillary hyperhidrosis would go through. So starting on the left-hand side, antiperspirants are things that we would all take in our day-to-day life. As you progress, you might be exposed to a clinical strength antiperspirant. And then once you've seen a physician, you'll probably get a prescription strength aluminum chloride. And one of the most dominant brand names in that area is Dry Sol. That particular product works by effectively blocking the sweat glands for a period of time. It can be painful because it kind of creates bags of sweat underneath your arms, and it ultimately doesn't deal with the underlying biology of the condition. The only two products that are used from a therapeutic perspective are reformulations of older drugs, older anticholinergics, one in an oral form and the other one in a wipe form. So Sofdra will sit between those antiperspirants and those older prescription products. Generally, patients, if they're looking for further solutions, will look to more invasive procedures, things like a Botox injection, about 25 to 30 sticks under each arm. It'll be effective for 3 or 4 months. You have to return for that. It's pretty painful, but works quite effectively. Or you could burn the nerve or even cut the nerve. Unfortunately, with those two latter interventions, what happens is the sweat tends to turn up in other areas around the body, and so ultimately doesn't kind of solve the problem. So this is a patient population that has many unmet needs. So something that is easy to apply, something that's potentially as effective as Botox, and something that doesn't have significant side effects that turns off other cholinergic effects such as tears or saliva or even urinary retention. So the target population for this is about 16 million hyperhidrosis patients in the US. Of those, about 10 million have primary axillary hyperhidrosis. We know that there's been about 3.7 million of these patients in the doctor's office in the last 12 months based on ICD-10 codes. And so that priority market is something that we will target with our sales force. Some recent work that we did also provided some insight that about 7 million patients have actually been diagnosed in the last 10 years. So this is an area where a lot of the patients who have the condition know that they have the condition, and many of them even know what it's called. And so what I'll talk about is the difference in the approach that we have between those 3.7 million that we'll target with a traditional sales force in the doctor's office and the other 6.3 million to make up that 10 who we are going to target and actually access via telemedicine. We started off the launch of the product with kind of a soft launch, pun intended, in the last couple of months, where we've been undertaking a patient experience program in collaboration with the International Hyperhidrosis Society. So we've gathered a small portion of their patient database. We've asked them to take surveys and give us some feedback on our whole telemedicine and product access experience. And those first patients have actually gone through being diagnosed using telemedicine and also have had their first refills. And so that initial patient experience program is less about generating revenue. It's more about kind of optimizing the system for a broader commercial launch, which will get underway this quarter. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. One of the interesting things for us is kind of how do you find patients, particularly so many patients. Hyperhidrosis is the third largest dermatological condition. So there's a significant number of patients out there. And so how do you find them in a day where people are using search less, but are consuming information and accessing information over the internet in a much more digitally focused fashion. So as we move through all of the different tools, so this is some of the tools that we would use. We choose from these. You can see that we're looking at everything from health claims. We know that about 7 million have been diagnosed in the last 10 years. We can actually look at are these patients buying hyperhidrosis t-shirts as an example from Amazon or Walmart. We can even listen in and kind of capture those signals from social media, things like Instagram, on Reddit, where patients are actually talking about their hyperhidrosis and the impact on their life. We did a social listening program a few months ago where we detected about 435,000 patients talking about excessive sweating, talking about hyperhidrosis and the impact that it actually had on their lives. So by combining these signals, we're able to actually put information directly in front of patients at that moment of relevance, the time that they're looking for information about their condition, and actually move them straight through into an online telemedicine consult, which, if appropriate, allows them to be prescribed Sofdra and have it delivered directly to their door. Let's talk a little bit about how that process works, because it's pretty unique, both the online diagnosis and the closed fulfillment of the product directly to their door. So the patient path looks a little bit like this. So based on that social media listening or the activity that they have online, we actually can put content in front of them, have them click on that, take them directly to our brand page. A patient will register or log in and then complete an online medical assessment and then be scheduled for a visit or an offline diagnosis with a HCP. That first part of the process is really important because it allows us to capture information not just about the patient and their condition, but also about what products that they've tried before, and that will become much more relevant in the coming slides as we talk about patient access. The patient can actually be diagnosed directly over video, much like we're talking today, by an audio call, or they can actually fill out a diagnosis form that allows them to be diagnosed asynchronously. That electronic prescription is sent to our partner SendRx, which is a closed fulfillment network. And SendRx acts as kind of a concierge service to clear any insurance hurdles, to deal with any logistical issues, and ensure that the product actually ends up in the patient's hands. What's really important about this process as well is that SendRx will automatically each month provide a refill of that prescription to the patient. And one of the reasons that they're able to do that is that we will buy down the copay for the patient to zero, so there's no need to call the patient on a monthly basis and gain their credit card information. We'll effectively send that out automatically directly to their house. And from the patient experience program, we already know that patients are receiving their drug within 24 to 48 hours. And indeed, from the start of this process all the way to the very end, you can be made aware of Sofdra, get diagnosed, and have the have the prescription shipped directly to your door within 48 hours. So much faster than the traditional approach where you would go to a primary care physician, maybe get an appointment with a dermatologist a month or two later, maybe be diagnosed and pick up your prescription from the CVS, and then maybe pick up your refill. So that whole closed loop process means it's much more efficient for the patient, but it also means that refills are much likely to happen, which ultimately drives our profitability and also helps in the overall gross to net calculation for us as well. So let's talk a little bit about payers and how they're looking at the drug and how we can expect to have coverage. And we're already seeing this coverage paying out. We've executed contracts that reflect these pie charts with the large majority of commercial payers. Of those, about 36% of those prescriptions will basically go straight through with no restrictions at all. About 35% of them will be covered. The prior authorization is to label. So do you have the medical condition? We have to show that they have an ICD-10 code for the diagnosis. The single step edit is actually through Drysol. So that product that I mentioned on the pipeline slide, aluminum chloride, pretty much every hyperhidrosis patient has tried that at some stage in their life. So that's a patient attestation for that step edit. We don't have to produce a claim, and we don't have to step through someone else's product. So you can see that a good 70% or so of patient claims are pretty seamless. The other 19%, the non-formulary subject to review, requires us to make a phone call to the insurer and work through basically the same PA to label and step edit. and then about 10% of those patients won't be covered. We are actually enrolled in Medicare. Those patients will be able to access the product within the coming months. And you can see that with the addition of Medicare, we end up with about 23% with no restrictions and about 60% covered with a PA to label. So this insurance coverage has been in preparation for more than a year. It's playing out pretty much exactly as we had planned. And as I mentioned, on the commercial insurance side, we have those contracts executed with the large majority of the players. And indeed, through our patient experience program and as we head into commercial launch, the coverage is playing out as we seek. And I guess one of the key issues here for us is many of the competitive products do not have payer contracts, and many of the competitive products do not have or are not enrolled in Medicaid. And so as a consequence, patient access is the key barrier to actually getting the product to patients in this area. So very exciting for us, the result of a lot of work from our access team, and something that we think stands us in very good stead to ensure that the patient gets the product every time. So just recapping, we've announced coverage recently with Ascent Health. That payer coverage adds to what we already have with more than 110 million commercial lives covered. Our Medicaid patients will also have access in the coming months. And we're on target to have the entire commercial lives pool covered at our target price rebate levels, and understanding those limited payer restrictions. So a very pleasing outcome for us. I just want to mention quickly the impact of the product globally. So our product, soft bromide, has been approved in Japan with our partner Kaken. It's a lower dose of the product. It was actually approved a bit more than 2.5 years ago. And they have sold about 350,000 units of their product called Ecloc in the last 12 months. The incidence prevalence of hyperhidrosis in both Japan and the US, and indeed the rest of the world, is very similar, albeit the population of Japan is about the third the size of the USA. So kind of what's interesting for us about this is not just that they're able to get the product approved, obviously, but also provide it to patients. But you're only allowed to give 2 refills in Japan, and in practice they only give 1. So many of those 350,000 units that are being sold are actually being sold to new patients, and to be able to generate north of 350,000 units or prescriptions of the product in the last 12 months after 3 years of launch is pretty impressive. So it gives us confirmation that there's a large unmet need and something that we can address with our product. So just focusing on what we have to do to be successful in the coming months. You've seen here, we've talked about the patient experience program that's been underway for the last few months. Our sales force is fully engaged now. They will actually go into the market in February after their launch meeting at the end of Japan. We do have an expanded digital program where we're actually offering Sofdra to a limited number of highly qualified patients from some databases that's happening at the moment. And then the next phase, as our sales force enter the market, we'll roll out our full digital AI campaign supported by telemedicine, which ultimately allow us by about the middle of this year to kind of hone the spend and the focus between our digital approach with telemedicine and our traditional approach with a sales force. And then the back end of this year will be all about expanding our field force targets and optimizing our digital campaign spend, ultimately to improve both profitability and revenue generation for the company. So what does success look like for us? Just in conclusion here, there's really 3 pillars that we focus on. The first of which is to make sure that we convert a good percentage of that 3.7 million existing patients who are currently seeking treatment, but also to activate a percentage of those other 6.3 million patients who have hyperhidrosis, who are unsatisfied And we know that about 7 million of that total 10 have in the last 10 years had a diagnosis. So, if we convert, a good percentage of that 3.7 million, and even a small percentage of that 10 million, we've got a significant patient base, particularly if we can cost effectively get them into telemedicine to be able to fulfill the product and to avoid both the distributor fees and the other fees that are generally associated with the distribution of pharmaceuticals today. Probably the biggest point I want to leave you with is the importance of refills. So buying down that copay to zero and directly shipping the product to the door means that rather than getting 1.7 or 2 refills per patient, which is the average for all products in the US at the moment, we should be looking at north of 8 to 10 refills per patient, which ultimately drives the profitability of the company as the cost of customer acquisition is spread out over many more refills and obviously a lot more product going out the door. So very exciting time for us. And we look forward to the full launch of the product this quarter and reporting back to the market as we begin to generate revenue in the course of this year.
Fantastic there, Matt. Thank you so much for that presentation. Very informative. I have time for maybe just a couple of questions here, and I want to maybe start where you just ended there, talking about sort of the importance of this closed fulfillment and automatic refills, and how it sort of leads to the improved gross to nets. Is this something your team has done before?
Yeah, it is, and probably an earlier version of this. I think, Robert. Obviously, technology's allowed us to do more things. So many of the team were kind of senior folks at Medicis, one of the world's largest dermatology companies. In the early 2010 to 2013 period, they kind of pioneered this idea of having a single pharmacy network, which allows you to understand the patient control that shipping. What we're doing this time, obviously, is buying down the copay to zero. We're not requiring a credit card. We're not requiring access to the patient on a monthly basis. And so if we avoid the distributor that puts 20% of the gross to net back in our pocket straight away, smaller reserves and returns and other pharmacy fees means that our overall gross to net improves by north of 25%. And so that, from a profitability perspective, is really important. But it's now enabled with digital electronic prescribing. It's now enabled with some of the other technologies that we have available now to deal with patients. So it's really an upgraded version of what was originally developed with Medicis.
Makes sense. How does the performance of sofpironium bromide in Japan influence your thoughts on really the potential here in the US?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, they did about 350,000 prescriptions in the last 12 months, with a population of about the third of the size. So, given that the incidence and prevalence is pretty similar, if we did anything like, 350,000 or a million prescriptions in a year, we'd be pretty happy, obviously, at the whack that we're targeting and ultimately the net price that we'll end up with. I think what it speaks to as well is just that unmet need. So, in the third year after their launch, they're still finding, probably 270, 280,000 new patients to bring onto the product. And the challenge that they have, obviously, is that they can only give 2 refills, in practice 1. If we can get, our patients to get most of the refills for the year, which we can do through our system, and we can keep those patients rather than have to constantly find new patients because people are dropping off, given the challenges of getting their prescription. That really allows us to kind of build a step, if you like, where every month we're adding new patients, but we're also keeping the ones that we had before, so that the pool of patients grows much more quickly.
Yep, makes sense. Maybe final question here. You're sort of building this platform out, right? For Sofdra. Appears to be suitable for probably other products. Are you looking to add to the portfolio here?
Yeah, we are. So obviously the work that we've done to create this closed fulfillment, to set up the telemedicine system, and obviously all the other logistical elements that go with that. We have one product that our sales folks have in their bag at the moment. We think we can leverage that, with other dermatology products that are for common skin diseases, with things that can be diagnosed, without a blood test or without a genetic test. So again, common skin diseases and things that are refilled, and where refills actually drive both compliance and benefit for the patient and ultimately profitability for the company. And so all of those things together kind of need to be the product profile of what we're looking for. And yes, indeed, we will look to add other products to the platform over time. The lesson for us really from a commercial perspective is, when Medicis was ultimately bought out by Valeant, now Bausch and Lomb, or Bausch Health was, the platform was the most valuable thing because, acquirers can put other products on those platforms and the revenue is important, but ultimately, what you're building from a platform perspective becomes also highly relevant too.
That's fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for your participation in the conference here. I want to thank everyone as well for watching. If you'd like to get in touch with Matt or have any additional questions, I'd be happy to help coordinate. You send me an email, Blum, BLUM, at lythampartners.com. Just as a reminder, we have a few more presentations and fireside chats coming up here, so please don't go anywhere. Again, Matt, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day here.
Thanks so much.